You're listening to the Church of Honky Tonk, where the invitation to worship is, would you like to dance? And every dance is a prayer.
We're your hosts, Sharon and Diana. We're two social dance enthusiasts discussing the divine intersection of live music, two-step, and an old wooden dance floor. And today on the Church of Honky Tonk, we have an episode that is dedicated to touch.
We wanted to make this its own episode. Touch is obviously super important within the social dance community. Why else are we talking about it?
We've talked a little bit about touch in our episode about leading and following. We talked a lot about connection and the conversational nature of social dance, which is nonverbal. So, of course, physical contact is the main way that nonverbal communication takes place. Partner dances, where you're dancing with one other person, touch is really endemic to these dances. It's really what makes them unique. And I feel like that type of touch, that kind, consensual contact of partner dancing really creates an atmosphere of trust and care and community that you experience at honky tonks and at other dance scenes. And so I felt like this topic, we feel like this topic deserves a conversation and an episode all of its own. So to jump into this, let's do a little bit of a review on physical connection and how it functions in two-step. So Diana, when you're thinking about your physical connection with a partner, what does that look like for you?
I would break it down into three main foundations of partner dancing: where you are touching them, the tension you are using in your touch, and then the release or the absence of touch with your partner. When we're talking about where we touch our partners, generally a lead and a follow are going to have a touch connection point with their hands together, as well as hands on like a shoulder blade or the back. Sometimes though, connection points might be like a lead touches either the center of the back, occasionally the hip, or like center back. And what I mean by tension is not so much about like a grip or a squeeze. It's kind of this like rigidity and tension that you have. I feel it mostly like in my forearms. It's where like that push sensation is going to come from. It tells my follow also like based on where that tension is directed, like how they are going to move their body. And then we've got the release. At some point, you break that touch or you break that connection with your partner in like a turn or a breakaway. You two are no longer connected. And it's this continuous cycle that happens throughout the whole dance. The framework or the grammar maybe of this conversation that you're having with your partner. Yeah, it's where the silent communication comes from: your touch, your tension, and your release.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel that too. I've been thinking so much lately in my dancing about that level of tension and trying to find the right level, like seeing how relaxed and like fluid and elastic I can be with a partner while still maintaining enough tension that what I'm communicating is clear. And this is just like a bit of a side note that it's really nice when you can have a very clear connection with a minimal amount of like muscular rigidity. If you know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, because if someone's coming at me really strong with like a lot of force and a lot of tension behind their movement, it can be startling or off-putting. You don't want to feel overpowered in any sort of role that you're dancing in. Yeah. So yes, there is this fine balance that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And we have touched on this before. I want to have connection with someone. They could do the most basic of, they could do the most rudimentary of dance moves with good connection, and that will sustain me through a dance and fulfill me in that dance more than someone that's trying to whip me around to do these advanced dance moves.
Yeah, I think what you just said is a really important distinction between physical touch and connection. They're two different things. Like you can have your hand, have a hand connection. You can have a connection on the hand, on someone's back between your hand. Like you could be touching them, but not communicating well. And it's something that's developed with practice. We talk about it, I talk about it a lot from the follow perspective as listening, right? I think we said that a lot in lead follow because you're listening for what the lead is doing and responding. But that listening is important in both roles. And if you feel like a lead isn't touching you with a sensitivity to what's happening in your body, or I guess either role, right? That is not connected, and it isn't a good touch sensation, right? You want to feel like there is, if something happens in your body, tension changes for you, or you're moving in a certain way, and there's no response, then that's a lack of connection.
Yeah, and I think this too sort of gets into our next focus area. Depending on where you're dancing or what style of dancing you're doing, there are different norms for what is good touch, what is bad touch, how you start a dance, how you end a dance. So I know, Sharon, you have some kind of connection points, or let's see, you have some thoughts about the different scenes that you have danced in and what is normal there and what is normal in other spaces.
The touch aspect of partner dancing definitely varies depending on what dance you're doing, the social scene that you're walking into. Like this is something that requires a little bit of observation if you're new in a room to kind of see how people are interacting with each other. I really do feel like every time you have physical contact, in this welcome and caring way, it reinforces good feeling, it reinforces trust. So it's important not to violate that trust by, barging in and behaving in a way that doesn't really fit. So the first thing to do is kind of get a sense of the norms of the scene. There are dances that are done in what's called a close embrace, like Argentine tango, Balboa, where the actual torsos of the two dancers are in physical contact, and the lead comes through chest to chest or rib cage to rib cage contact. Two-step is not one of those dances. It's done in an open frame, right? We're holding a frame, hand to back connection, hand to hand connection. But say you've done one of these other close embrace dances, you're new to two-step, maybe be conscious that is your close embrace is not a norm in the scene, right? And stick to an open frame. And there's a million nuances to this too, right? From
yes.
person to person, from space to space. And good communication, verbal communication too, is critical to just, assuming best intentions with people and setting your own boundaries, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit more. But there is one other thing I want to kind of touch on when it comes to norms. This is sort of anecdotal, but I feel like it's a good illustration. So we've talked a lot about the empty bottle, where you and I have danced extensively here in Chicago, my local honky tonk. And at the empty bottle, hugging at the end of the dances is a norm. Once you know somebody, you've met them a couple of times and you've danced with them a few times, you're just, a lot of people, it's not a hard and fast rule, but a lot of people hug at the end of a dance. That is not necessarily the norm in other spaces, So like in Chicago's swing dancing scene, and I think in other swing dancing scenes, high-fiving has become the norm at the end of dances. And hugging is really uncommon unless you're a close friend of the person. So it's like one of those things I had to sort of check myself, especially at the beginning of my sort of return to Lindy Hop, that I shouldn't go around embracing people necessarily at the end of a song because maybe they didn't know me that well, or maybe they just didn't want a sweaty hug from me. So it's just like I'm an experienced dancer, and I still like need to check my social cues to make sure I'm respecting the norms of the space.
I think that's good practice for everybody.
And boundary setting. So let's talk a little bit about that, because there will be circumstances when somebody's dancing in a way that doesn't feel comfortable. How do you deal with that kind of situation?
Yeah. So I have a little story that goes along with this. Like one time, a couple years ago, I was at a blues dance where close embrace is very common. You may dance torso to torso with a complete stranger. And I was dancing with an elderly gentleman who I had met a couple times before, and we were dancing in a close embrace, and I was not feeling it. My brain was going a little haywire, and to his credit, maybe he could sense there was some discomfort on my part. He checked in with me. How are you feeling? Are you doing okay? And I said, actually, can we open up our frame a little bit? That would make me feel more comfortable. And then we finished the dance, and it was lovely. I had this, lovely dance with this older gentleman. And I definitely would not have felt that way if we had continued to dance in close embrace.
Yeah.
We talk about nonverbal communication, but when it comes to boundary setting, it comes across more clearly if you verbalize your boundaries.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. And credit to him for having the sensitivity to feel that something was off and to ask you if there was something he could do differently.
Yeah, exactly.
So in the same vein as feeling, let's say you're feeling a little uncomfortable, or physical contact is starting to get maybe a little bit overwhelming. This is something you've talked about where you felt, quote unquote, touched out, like you've had enough touch. You want to maybe talk a little bit about that experience?
Absolutely. Touched out is a term that is used among like the parenting and caretaking community when you are overstimulated and the sense of touch is too much. For me, I do get overstimulated. I kind of credit that to being a teacher because I get a lot of sensory input just in my day-to-day work. And so when I go to a dance, the noise, the heat, and then the touch with my dance partners, it can sometimes be too much in the sense that I'm no longer enjoying myself and I need to sit down, or I need to like go outside and get a breath of fresh air, maybe even take a little walk or something. And that's that can happen for anybody. And I think it's important to talk about just because sometimes being overstimulated can sometimes feel like you're failing in a way. You're like, oh, I no longer want to do this thing that I love, and I came here for this event, and but I'm here to say that that's totally normal. To feel overstimulated at these kinds of events happens often. I think I can speak for myself, and I think I can speak for other dancers as well, that it's important to take rest. It's important to recognize when you are feeling overstimulated, and you're not a failure for sitting out a few dances. Let people enjoy a little extra space on the dance floor. Sit down and enjoy the music or enjoy watching your friends dance. And it's okay to not want to be touched either for the rest of the night or for just a few minutes. You can totally jump back in whenever you're feeling ready.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things I really like about honky tonk scenes that are in like a public space, like a bar, or a dance hall that has room to go off and do something else are like my favorite spaces, because you don't feel like you're only participating if you're on the dance floor. You can still be having a nice time, just having a conversation off to the side or sitting and watching a band and just taking a breather. Because people need that for sure.
I think the other thing that I was thinking of is like, it's totally normal to not want to touch other sweaty bodies, or like your body is feeling really sweaty and you can feel it and you feel gross, and that we get warm, we get sweaty. Like, I think it's totally normal to be like, ew, I don't like this feeling anymore.
Definitely.
Okay.
And then I'm going to chime in and say, it's also okay to love it when it's sweaty.
Yeah.
Because I am somebody who doesn't really shy away from it too much. I really...
It's literally the sea of humanity, like what I talked about. Like, your sweat.
The salty, sweaty sea of humanity.
So to be seen by other people, either people you know or complete strangers, and to be held by them is so enlightening. Not only is it enlightening, but like, we know that it's good for us. It's a core part of who we are as human beings, to be seen and held by others.
Yeah. And it doesn't happen much in our society. Like, this type of physical contact that is welcome and respectful, it doesn't really have many spaces in our daily life. People will maybe pay to go get a massage or something, but otherwise you're not necessarily in environments where you experience this sort of kind, caring touch from friends and from people you maybe have just met. And I think it truly helps create empathy. I think it builds trust in just your fellow human beings in a way that we really need. You don't have to know anything about the person you're dancing with at all. You can still have this moment of communication with them and understanding that is on a nonverbal level and just like a human to human level. And I think it's really wonderful. I think it's, like you say, it's good for us. You can, it contributes to that sense of euphoria in a really great social dance.
I think that we because we know that this experience of touch is so uncommon, we wanted to investigate a little bit further. And so we're asking my friend Sika, who is a social dancer and musician and massage therapy student in Baltimore, for her take on the effects of touch in social dance, and its physical effects and its psychological and maybe even spiritual effects.
I am so excited to meet Sika and hear all of her insights. So stay tuned. When we come back from a very short break, you will hear our conversation with Sika. Okay, sweet.
We'll have some.
Yeah, right. Okay, so this is...
All right. Welcome back to the Church of Honky Tonk podcast. I'm Diana with my co-host Sharon, and we are so excited to have with us today my friend Sika.
Woohoo! Hello.
Hey, Sika.
Sika, will you please introduce yourself and let us know how you got into social dancing?
I just have to say thank you for having me on. I am definitely the type of person who does like fake interviews alone in my room. So the fact that I'm like actually sitting for one is really exciting. I am, or I guess the reason maybe probably why you thought of me for this is I'm currently in training for massage therapy. So I'm constantly thinking to be a massage therapist. I'm constantly thinking about touch. And then I also got into social dancing via the Baltimore Honky Tonk. So that was my two-step was my first experience of like, whoa, dancing with a partner, asking someone to dance, being asked to dance. I started going to the honky tonk because at that time I was trying to figure out a way to like develop more as a musician, and Alex, who runs it, asked if anyone wanted to come help and learn about live sound, and that was an obvious yes. And he's an amazing person to learn sound from. And then I was also watching this event happen sort of from beginning to end of like setting up with the band, and Dee Dee and the Do-Rights was the band who was playing that night. So they were really cool, and they had these beautiful harmonies and were so down to earth. And then the dancers came in, and it was this whole, I mean, I had never been to a show like that. Like I had been to a lot of like alternative, like kind of punk shows. That's like the music I grew up listening to and the shows I was going to in Baltimore. And it was not the same thing at all. Far beyond the musical genre, but just the structure of the night and the fact that the band played for what felt like so long, and like they just kept going and the dancers just kept going, and it was like a social event too. Like no one was like standing with their arms crossed and like in a little clique, and I just felt like this immediate sense of belonging and excitement and an ability to have fun that I had not had at that level like in my life. Like it really, I feel like it changed my life. And I got into, there's swing dancers who show up. So I got into Lindy Hop after that, and then I got into blues not long after that, which is kind of like my home scene. But in terms of as much as I love and am invested in blues, honky tonk is like kind of the magical place where I go to reset. So that's how I got into social dancing, and I've done a lot of other jobs and stuff, but my sort of main identity right now is massage therapist in training.
I'm curious, Sika, you dance across multiple scenes just like Diana and I do, and you said that two-step is a place to reset. What do you mean by resetting, and why is the honky tonk the place that you go?
I mean, even talking about it like immediately puts a smile on my face, because since I've been in school for the past year, I've been super busy. And so there's been times when I just can't get out dancing as often as I would like to. And then when I go back after a couple weeks off, or like sometimes after a month off, just the feeling of like, oh, right, this is the point of life is so strong. And it's not in a sense of like, it's like a relaxed, content happiness, like what I would describe as like a serenity kind of a feeling. So it really feels spiritual to me, and it's from so many different aspects of being there. Some of it is like a physical, just like getting my blood moving again, and like after a long day of like working from home or whatever, to come out and dance feels really good physically. But then there's seeing people, and there's meeting new people, and there's the music, and then there's the familiarity of the venue, and just like, I mean, it's like there's a term that I recently learned about a well-conditioned space, which is sort of usually used to refer to spiritual spaces that people have been practicing in for a long time, like, you know, places where people go to pray or where they would go to meditate. And when you walk in, it just feels like the space like the soil's already been turned for you. And so that's what Honky Tonk feels like to me, where I'm walking in and benefiting from the history of dancing in that space, but then also just the people who have already been in that space for a little while and like warmed it up for me. So just in so many ways, like a physiological, psychological, spiritual reset.
Beautiful. I love that idea of a well-conditioned space. I feel like I know exactly what you mean. What a good term.
Right? Yeah. You can feel it. Like as soon as I heard that term for the first time, I was like, oh, I know what that feels like. Yeah.
Well, I think that kind of starts to tiptoe into our topic of the day, which is touch. And that touch is happening within this space. And I think those kind of spaces are the right conditions, the right environment for this kind of touch to take place. We wanted to ask you, kind of tapping into your expertise and your training as a physical therapist, about the effects of physical touch, physiological, emotional. We could take these one at a time or however you want, if you want to talk about them in a more integrated way, psychological, just what is the benefits of touch?
What a huge question.
We could break it down. We could take it apart a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like I started getting a little anxious thinking about like all the like research that exists and like wanting to like deliver on the facts and stuff. But I'm going to approach this in more of a grounded way, like grounded in my personal experience. And I mean, there is great research on it, but I'm just going to talk about the facts that resonated the most with me when I learned them. And that really like changed my understanding of touch. That's been a huge part of my journey in massage school is like just getting so much more nuance about what touch means across different contexts and for different people. And I thought about it a little bit before that, but the first exercise that we did in class, like hands-on exercise, was doing an entire 60-minute session just using a technique called still touch. So you're not actually doing like massage strokes, but you're just laying your hands on a certain part of the body. And then, you know, whenever you feel like that's enough, you move to the next point, and then you do that for 60 minutes. And so my like practice clients for that week were receiving something that was very different than what they assumed massage would feel like. And it was really instructive watching their body respond, even though I wasn't manipulating tissue. Just touching and presence was so powerful. And especially it can be really helpful. In past years, they've done it in the context of field work in like senior living homes where people are not getting a lot of touch that's outside of a medical context. So that was like sort of my first experience of being like, whoa, this is so much more than I even thought. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up, so there's a researcher called, who's since passed, called Ashley Montague, and he wrote this book in 1971, I believe, called Touching the Human Significance of Skin. And so that kind of like influenced a lot of research on how touch is important for human development, and then a lot of massage research for years to come. But something that he brought up it comes from the field of embryology, so the study of embryos and their development and our development in the womb. And, you know, the idea is that form influences function. That's like a general design principle and a thing in anatomy, right? And that the earlier that a structure develops, the more important theoretically, the more important it is to our survival. So our skin is one of the first things that develops when we're in womb, in utero. And I feel like I'm like getting a little shaky talking about this because it excites me so much. Like when I first read this, I was like, my mind was just totally blown. But your skin develops out of the same layer of cells as your nervous system. So,
Okay.
you know, basically there are embryonic cells that differentiate into what we think of as our nervous system and our nervous tissue. And then some of them become skin. And Ashley Montague sort of proposed that we think about the nervous system as having an internal component and an external component, which is our skin. And so that's really the first way that we have to communicate when we're in the womb, when we're, you know, sort of first birthed. And then it's the last way that we can communicate, even if we lose our verbal abilities, our ability to hear, our ability to see, people can still touch. And then we have this like big gap in the middle where usually somewhere around like pre-adolescence, people start touching a lot less and being touched a lot less. And then throughout adulthood, you're not, you know, hugging is reduced, like sitting on someone's lap, being held, like all of those things like really become minimal unless you consciously seek it out, or unless you're lucky to come from a culture or family where that's really provided. I do not come from a culture like that. Or I should actually say I do come from a culture like that, but that part of our culture has been disrupted along the line of generations due to lots of factors. So so the experience of social dancing for me, I think as I even was like writing the notes for this, it reminded me of what an adjustment it was when I first came into social dancing to touching as much as you do just during a dance. And that's not to, you know, that's not even including the amount of like hugs and stuff like that that happens socially outside of the dancing. And to not immediately tie it to flirting or sexuality, but just like this is just a person to person form of communication that like the need at that time was so strong for me. I felt like, and I feel like a lot of people have the experience of like every person that I danced with, I had a huge crush on after. And then that kind of ebbed after a while of getting used to like, this is okay. And this is available in abundance. And I can enjoy it on this like basic spiritual level, and be rejuvenated by it. But that's a little bit about touch. But the thing about, you know, our skin, like, I think it's so crucial to remember that it's a part of our nervous system. I was talking to my roommate about this last night, and she was saying like, well, I think that might be almost like a jump for some people because you're so used to thinking about your nervous system as this thing that's like inside of you and like at the core of you. But everything that comes in through our senses is interacting with our nervous system. The second that you not even put hands on someone, but just stand near them, you're interacting with their nervous system. So there's so much, it's, you know, and I heard the part of your conversation about being overstimulated. Like, no wonder we get overstimulated. There's so much happening in a dance space.
Yeah, you said about that kind of gap in our early adolescence in receiving touch made me think about just what I've seen in my own music classroom at the elementary, early middle school like level. Those kids are hanging on each other, especially boys as well, like girls and boys. I've seen kind of like hang on their friends, like hugs, or like literally hanging. Boys like to jump on each other or tousle each other around. And as a teacher, you hate it. You want to be like, stop it. But that really just reinforces like, no, they really do need this right now, because they're not getting it elsewhere. Yeah.
Yes. I just want to add the overlap here with playing is so key to me. The ability to play and have fun as a way to resolve, in my experience, complex trauma, but then also to sort of like support and sustain a sense of safety is so important. I feel like touch is like really, really goes, no pun intended, but hand in hand with that. So in touching, in that book Touching, there was one piece, and this is like in the 70s, but they did a study about women who seek out sexual encounters, but what they really want is to be held. And it was like this high frequency of the amount of times that women wanted to be held and were like, well, the thing that I know that I can get is sex, and so I'm going to ask for sex, but what I want is physical touch. And there was also this like little footnote about like these women also were big fans of ballroom dancing, and I just like loved that. But it speaks to the point of like when we're not getting something that we need, we find other ways to get it. And so I feel like dance has been such a great a way for me to address my need for touch without forcing it to be in the context of dating or forcing it to be like, a situation that I don't necessarily want to start in my life, but like I still need to find the thing that helps me feel close to other human beings,
Yeah, absolutely. This is so interesting. We should cut this one out, but I just like as a side note, are you guys both familiar with the fact that Mormons are some of the best ballroom dancers in the United States?
I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to dance camp at Brigham Young University one summer, and these college students were like world-class competitive ballroom dancers, and it's huge in the Mormon community. It was a place where you could touch other people, and it was considered acceptable.
Yeah. I mean, there's also this whole digression that I went on. Since it's the Church of Honky Tonk, I was thinking about, honky tonks historically being these like sinful places where people drink and they dance. And, I think there's a reason why the Loretta Lynn song is like, I used to be great and I used to be fine and a normal girl, but now I'm a honky tonk girl, There's a reason for that. And so I, to me, especially having grown up so religious, that was one of the first things that came to mind. I mean, I totally resonate with the story of Footloose and like there being so much moral judgment around dancing with people. And, like the things that could possibly go on. And anyway, so that was just a piece that felt important to me, but to like have that kind of rewired in my brain that it can be something else or something broader. It doesn't have to be the specific context of sexuality was really, really helpful for me.
Yeah. Diana, you've added a few questions in here since we first sat down to put together this list. So do you want to jump into some of these other?
Sure. And this is for either Sharon or for Sika. What kind of information do you take in from dancing with a stranger for the first time?
As you were saying this, it made me think about the skin being part of the nervous system that you were saying earlier, Sika. So you're making a direct communication line between your own nervous system and somebody else's. So there's so much information that you get, right? Like I was thinking about how much I pay attention to how much a person is contracting or how released they are, or like more muscular kind of states. But it's so much beyond that, right? Because as somebody comes into your personal space, you can feel their emotional energy, you can feel their physical energy, and then when you're touching, it's much more direct, that like transfer of information. And I don't know the science behind it, of course, but I know the experience for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. This immediately made me think of when people who are newer to dancing apologize when they first kind of make contact, like, oh, sorry, I don't have a lot of experience. I'm new at this. This is my first time here. And I always think, like, well, first of all, you're welcome to be however you are and you don't have to apologize. But also, I can tell so much just by dancing with you. You don't even have to say that you're new at this for me to feel that you're new at this. And that doesn't mean like I can feel that they're bad, but usually just like little things of like hesitance or like the sort of nonverbal question of, is this okay? You know, like wherever they're, whether it's hand placement or the type of step that they're doing or whatever. And also just like rhythm. I think rhythm is to me, my roommate, who is not a dancer, asked me what to me is a good dancer, and for me it was number one, rhythm, the ability to be in rhythm, and I think a lot of that comes from that initial, some of those first moments of feeling them moving to the music, and which to me, I'm usually feeling it in their hips in some sort of way, or like really in their core. So yeah, there's so much, as Sharon was saying, there's so much information, and I think it's interesting to think of how much information there probably is that's happening subconsciously, but that still is sort of like immediately relevant to the dance that you're about to have.
With that in mind, and I want to be careful here not to blur lines between therapeutic touch and social touch, right? But, you know, as somebody trained in both of those realms, when you're in a situation, do you lead and follow, Sika?
I do.
So particularly in leading, are there any things you draw on from your training that help you do, like, to be more receptive and more responsive through touch to your partner? It doesn't have to be in a leading context, but I feel like there's a responsibility there.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm grateful for the distinction between therapeutic touch and social touch, because that's something that feels like the deepest challenge for me in this training, to like really focus on what is therapeutic about what I'm doing, and the role that I'm playing, and then and how is that different from other ways that I touch people. And you know, but an interesting thing that I've been thinking a lot lately comes from a type of an energy work modality called zero balancing, and so we learned these four different ways of interacting with people energetically, and you know, some of those are probably a word that a lot of people are familiar with, which is channeling, where you're tapping into something bigger than you, moving it through you as the vessel, and then out to the other person. There's blending, where it's sort of like you're blurring the lines between where you end and the other person starts. And then there's interface. And interface is sort of encouraged for therapeutic touch. And it's basically being able to make a connection, but not blurring your sort of energetic bodies. And that tends to be sort of like the what allows your touch to be therapeutic, or allows the interaction to be therapeutic, because that person is staying within themselves and sort of using themselves and their connection to the earth or to a higher power or whatever as their resource for healing, and not taking from you and pulling from you. And that can be a really humbling thing to try to like stay at, because I think a lot of people are drawn to any sort of care profession out of a desire to help people. And so you can sort of be you can be giving away a lot of your energy, and actually giving the other person the impression that their healing is coming from you, rather than coming from within their own body. So I share that because the way to stay at interface is to focus on the point of contact, of physical contact, and to really keep your mind there. So, sometimes I'll say during a session, like, this is my body, that's their body. And because it can become like a little confusing, you can really be sort of like, it can feel like you're sort of falling into them a bit. And so to go back to dancing, I've been practicing that. I've been trying to practice this in like every context in my life. And I've learned that like therapeutic touch is a specific thing, but it's sort of just like on a spectrum of touch. And it's helpful to stay at interface with people that you're interacting with in general, because like our nervous systems sort of need to be both differentiated but still connected. And then if you're going to sort of do more than that or blur those lines, at least let it be conscious rather than unconscious. And so leading and following is an interesting framework to think about this through. As a leader, I used to feel, and by used to, I mean like a couple weeks ago. I mean, it's just funny how in dance, like you evolve so quickly, or I've evolved very quickly. But I used to have this feeling of like the best lead is a good follow, and, really practicing like listening and sort of trying to pay attention to what might make your follow feel good. And now I've noticed that, or now I sort of feel like, yeah, that can work. And that can also be a little bit draining, or it can sort of make me not want to lead sometimes, in the sense of I don't want to be responsible for someone else. I want to be enjoying the music and feel connected. And so it's brought me back to that thought of interface and what's the point of contact. I'm having an individual experience. You're having an individual experience. But we're having those experiences together within the space of our dancing. Yeah, I think it's just something that I'm like constantly exploring and sort of figuring out, like, does this work? Does this feel good? And then trying something different, But I think having a little bit more, bringing more awareness to what is it that I'm getting out of this experience has been instrumental for me, because a dance friend recently said that she really seeks out connection in each dance partnership. And I think, Diana, you mentioned something like that too. And for me, I was like, oh, I mean, that's like sort of like a byproduct for me, but I'm really focused on being connected with the music. And this other person is like just a person with me who's also trying to connect with the music. But then I'm realizing that's not what everyone is experiencing. And that's, I'm trying to not judge that as good or bad, or there's a specific way to be. But I think like thinking about what touch feels like to me, and especially what walking away from a dance with different people feels like. Like, do I feel nourished? Do I feel drained? Do I feel like something's off, but I just can't put my finger on it? Like, that has been really important. And I have a sort of an internal boundary where I just don't dance with people who leave me feeling off. Like if I dance with them once and it's just like, or especially a couple times, and I don't feel okay afterwards, and it doesn't even mean that they did anything necessarily, then I have to listen to that. And I think a lot of that has come from working in the context of massage and just having to gain a lot more trust in my nonverbal intuitive senses, instead of having everything be super verbal and super like concrete and external. Just like trusting that some information came through that's telling me like, maybe not. And usually down the line, as I get to know that person more, I see, oh, that's what that was about. But I have to trust it first.
This is a little more of a surface level question, but it is related on what we're talking about. Is there a style of dance that you enjoy just based on its touch feeling?
I think there's a reason why I'm drawn to blues. And part of that is, I think there's a little bit, just like culturally in that space, I feel like there's more room to explore the tension and release piece, and the like lots and lots of touch and no touch. And I think that's been really, it just feels like a field that I can play in for a really long time and get a lot of information out of. Yeah, but I think the funny thing is, I think like I love the feeling of two-step, like the rocking back and forth feeling, and that there doesn't have to be a ton of athleticism in that. And so that's a thing that's not necessarily about the touch piece, but about like, it requires the touch of two-step to have two people together, and to find that like perfect rock just feels like really soothing to me.
Yeah. I sometimes like, especially if there is enough room in the space for you to really like travel around the floor, two-step and waltz as well can often feel like floating or feel like skating.
Yeah.
Of course, I think it's depending on your state of being at the time, the kind of dance that you feel attracted to can definitely fluctuate. Like, I think right now I'm sort of more in my Zydeco Cajun era, because I really like the kind of, as you were saying, like the rocking.
Yeah.
But with Zydeco, it can feel a little bit more equestrian. This kind of bouncing is really satisfying.
I was just gonna say, like, it just is so, it's such a huge thing in somatic therapy, like shaking, bouncing, vibrations. Like, there's a reason why each dance for different people feels so good. And while blues is like the feeling of blues music to me has a lot of that vibration that like feels really healing. It's also a little bit more unpredictable, since there's more improvisation in dancing with another person. The thing that I like about honky tonk is that, or about two-step, is that there can be some variation, but a lot of times you're doing the same thing. And I think that like, it reminds me of like chanting, or like other ways that people sort of get into altered states. A lot of that requires repetition. And so I feel like the simplicity of two-step is so important, and something that I keep challenging myself to like keep it simple. And I know a lot of people, and sometimes I do, especially leading, feel this need to like, I gotta prevent this from being boring in some sort of a way. But if you can like get into that flow and stay in that flow, that can be like, just feel like the best thing ever.
Thing I've been trying to work on, not directly through two-step, because it probably has the least amount of this, but is groove, through other dance styles, like taking classes in hip hop and whacking and things like this, like trying to find a little bit more internal, be it bounce or vibration, like in my rib cage, like softening in here in the center where my heart is, so that I can make just more things available in my range of motion and my connection with the partner, trying to get a little softer, but without losing connection. And I say like two-step probably has the least amount of groove because it's more glidey and ballroomy. But I find if I can be a little softer inside, then I can connect and keep that consistent connection that's so nice in two-step, right? It doesn't have that compression and stretch like Lindy Hop does. It doesn't have as much like tension and release. You're kind of keeping a more unbroken connection with your partner as you progress and turn and all of that. So that's one of the things I really enjoy about two-step. And as you were saying, Sika, about like the the nice state you can get into when you're keeping things simple and when you're really kind of getting in the zone, for lack of a better word. That bringing what I am trying to develop in other dance practices into the two-step and seeing what I can learn from that has kind of opened it up a little bit more for me. So, I mean, I do all these different dances because I like all of them, and they all kind of feed something different for me, but they also inform each other too.
Yeah. I love whacking. That's all I have to say about that.
Oh my God.
I love it. I haven't done
Next
it,
podcast.
but I just love watching it. Yeah.
I can't say that I'm doing it either, but one of the beauties is that it's all about self-expression. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, the one last question that I wanted to ask, because I sometimes see this brought up in different... I see this brought up either in conversations with other dancers or like dancers on social media. What are your thoughts on skin-to-skin contact during social dancing?
Wait, my question is, what are they saying? I'm very, very off social media, so I never know what the discourse is.
Well, it's a very divisive subject. And this is mostly in like reference to if someone has if someone is wearing like an open backed shirt, so that the lead's hand or anybody's hand would be like on touching skin, like on the back. Some people don't like that. In other scenes, that's totally normal. So I just sort of wondered what your thoughts were on that.
I mean, I was going to say, I haven't really thought about that, but that's not true, because there's many outfits that I decide not to wear because I don't want to force a lead to directly touch my skin. And it also feels really limiting sometimes because I want to wear a thing with an open back, but I think of it more in terms of fluids like sweat, like that, and not just because it's gross, but just because it transfers things from my body to yours that maybe you don't want. And I know that can be unpleasant, but theoretically it would be nice if, I think once you go from over the clothing to skin, the things that we've been talking about relating to touch just get more intense, and intense can be unpleasant or it can be pleasant. So, I'm open to it, but it just requires, I think, definitely more sophisticated boundaries.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, I don't think I can say anything better than what you just said, Sika. I feel the same way. And interestingly, I'm only thinking of a very specific example because of one article of clothing that I really liked that had more of an open back. And then dancing with someone who was surprised when they put their hand on my back and touched my back, and I could tell they were like, oh, they were worried they were crossing a boundary with me. And so it became more like, I don't want to make a partner uncomfortable. I'm okay with this. I wore this piece of clothing. I'm okay with my back being touched, but maybe it's going to interfere with, a dance that could have felt more comfortable for someone else. So I kind of think of it in those terms, and I tend to just, arms bare up to the shoulders, but then keeping the back and torso pretty much covered, more for kind of just the norms, I guess, of the room. But yeah.
Well, and those are like the norms of the spaces that we dance in. Like I think about, because I don't think any of us really kind of dive into like the Latin and or ballroom scene where that might be much more acceptable. When I think about like the dance costumes that I've seen in those scenes. So.
You made this distinction about like wanting to try to express this sensation that is not romantic but is so awesome when you have this particular type of touch with other people, and like that's kind of at the heart, one of the things at the heart of all of this is this really incredibly, it can be euphoric, it can be tender, it can be nourishing, it can be playful, but it just all of this whole range of positive experiences you have through touching another person that I feel are really lacking in other parts of life. Just as you said at the top, Sika, like, we're, as children, we play, we hug, we hang off each other, we wrestle, we do whatever. And then as you get older and older, you are deprived more and more of touch. And so instead of asking you, is there anything else you'd like to mention, which we can still do, is there anything more on that you'd like to say or expand on?
You know, and I'm not just trying to flatter y'all, but I think like this podcast feels so important to me. And it's connected to like the whole reason why I got into massage therapy, the reason why I fell so in love with social dance. Because it was helpful for me, but also because it's been so healing for me. And to me, what healing involves is like a reconnection with your sense of vitality. You know, like spiritual to me means like this, like what is the essence of life? And to have healing spiritually involves connecting to other forms of life, whether that's nature or other people. And I feel like music has been so important as a part of that for me. Social dance has been so important. And then having this like training where I'm like constantly thinking about how much physical and mental and emotional healing can happen just from like putting my hands on someone's body in a particular fashion. And so I thought a lot about what's healing about touch and what's healing about dance, and then putting both of those things together felt like, okay, that's like sort of the magic that's happening. And some of it has to do with dance, for instance, it's all the pieces of like motion, blood circulation, repetitive vibrations, like we talked about, like all of those things happen whether you're dancing by yourself or with someone else. And then touch being this thing that activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is a crucial part of healing. Like we walk around all day with our sympathetic nervous system really active, like our survival, what do I gotta do? And where's the threat? And what am I afraid of? And what, like that sense of like, sort of like going back to like the days of like cavemen and having to constantly fend for yourself, like having that part of us constantly activated in our lives. And then having a place that we can come to where we're alert, right? Like I think about this like with meditation, where like there's a balance between you're alert and you're awake, but you're calm, right? You're regulated. And I feel like social dance provides a very similar, and people wouldn't think of it like that because it's so fun and it's so like active and whatever. But I think if you really like keep going and keep experiencing it, where the novelty like goes away a little bit so that you can like experience the depth of what you're really having with other people, you kind of get that benefit of, and this is the thing, this is the reason why like receiving multiple sessions of massage but is beneficial as opposed to like a one-off, is that you're training your body to be relaxed. And so when you walk into the session room, you're already starting this process of your body being like, oh, right, this is what this feels like. This is what the lighting is. This is this person that I've been working with. And it's a similar thing with social dance, where you walk into the room and it already starts, just a general sense of well-being and vitality. And that is like, it's something that like people just like critically need. And it's something I can't accomplish one-on-one with people for like $100+ for 60 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, this is like you're paying $10, sometimes free, whatever, to like get something that is genuinely helping you be more resourced as a human. And we need more internal resources of wellness in order to navigate the world. Even if the world was like super easy, which it's not, but even if it was, like, we need those internal resources. And as someone who has experienced a lot of complex trauma, I'm not walking around with those resources. And so dance was giving me something that that wasn't just me reading about how to think better or how to feel better, but it was actually giving me this like corrective experience of, this is what connection can be like. This is what safety can be like. This is what fun can be like. And it's helped me so much in different contexts of my life, but I just always think about the experience of, because I actually only started dancing like a year and some months ago. And before that, I was going through this like very messy, ugly breakup. And I just had this intuitive feeling, and I was praying a lot. And I got this feeling of like, I feel like dance is going to be a part of my healing journey, and I need to listen to that. And I used to go dancing, when I was in a space where people were dancing and I was on my own, I would feel this like desire to be on the dance floor with them, to join in. But I like couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Like I would be like standing off to the side and just like want to join so bad. But my body did not have the capacity to like let go. It was too much open space. And now when people talk about having that experience, I just feel for them so much, because it literally is like your body knows what would feel good. But because you've been, so conditioned to sort of repress that and like keep a lid on that and contract down on that, it just creates a really unpleasant experience of like fighting within yourself. And so I feel like social dance provided so much permission to like express a little bit at a time. And it wasn't me dancing on my own. It was me with another person who was sort of like supporting me. And the dance structure also provided this like safe container of like, well, I just have to do these steps. I don't have to like really like get wild or anything. And that has made it so that I'm always typically like the first person on the dance floor now. And that is something that I never in my life thought would be true of me, but it is now. And I feel like, I'm positive that so much of that comes from social dance and like the support network that dance provides, regardless of if you even like make friends or get to know the people in the space. Just attending, like, it is just so it's something that I wish for everybody. Like, as I go around the city, I'm always just like, you have to come to the honky tonk. Like, it's not even about the dancing. It's about putting your physical body in that space. Like, it's medicine. And I really believe that in my entire being. It's about like being in this joint collective experience with each other, and also being individual within that, but being like at the same time this big thing. I also have to say, in terms of like the the connections, the scaling up and scaling down of this, I always think of an avocado lately, of like the visual of a lot of like the way that our cells are shaped, the way that the earth is shaped, the way that an avocado is shaped, is there's this solid core. And then there's this like gooey stuff surrounding it. And then there's a membrane. And I feel like when I think about like the circle that y'all are always talking about in honky tonk, like when people actually do it, and just like how the room sort of like naturally starts to function and when it feels the best, also follows that same structure of like there's like a little bit of like a tightening of energy in the middle, and then it gets dissipated, but it's still contained within this like larger event. And so I think any time that we're recreating those sorts of experiences or shapes, it just like, it's the simplicity of it, of like, this isn't about winning, it's not about accomplishing something, like we're just moving, like we are just moving. And to be able to be in the presence of that, and I mean, you know, presence as in like mindful presence, but also like sharing space with people in that is just I mean, it's so profound.
Yeah.
To me.
And we've talked about as well being in the presence of music, and to have all of these three things happening at once, to be present in the music, to be present in the dance itself, and then the space itself is the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Man, when you were talking, Sika, I don't know, you were talking about avocados, but I felt like galaxies spinning. You know, I felt like I was going around the dance floor with atoms at the atomic level and at the intergalactic level. So, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for that.
I mean, the magnetism, you know, like that. Anyway, I'll take a deep breath.
I feel like this is like such a beautiful note to potentially wrap on, but I don't want to cut it off. If there's something more that you want to make sure you mention, Sika, I feel like we should just talk again at some point too. If there's an opportunity, maybe, and if you're open to it. But for now, for this conversation, is there anything more that you want to say that we didn't touch on?
I feel like we touched on so many things that I'm really grateful that y'all gave me the space to like be heard on. I feel so strongly about all of this stuff, if you can't tell. But also just like, thank you for like taking the time, and I feel like it takes courage to like really try to make something good and put it out there. So I'm excited for where this podcast goes. That's it. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and remember, it wasn't God who made honky-tonk angels, but they do find heaven on the dance floor.